Britain is rearming for a new era of danger. With threats multiplying from Russia to China, London pledges billions for submarines, nukes, cutting-edge weapons. The message is clear. The UK will not be caught unprepared. Take a look at this report.
The war drums are not distant anymore. Britain hears them, from the Arctic to the Pacific. Britain is rearming. After years of underfunding and strategic drift, the United Kingdom has slammed the brakes on military complacency. In a seismic new strategic defense review, London has declared a full-spectrum military revival, expanding its submarine fleet, boosting troop numbers, and even considering tax hikes to prepare the nation for an era of permanent global confrontation. UK PM says that the efforts would also lead to job creation.
We will defend our homeland by investing in our air and missile defence to better protect these islands. We will create a hybrid Royal Navy, blending drones with warships, submarines and aircraft to patrol the North Atlantic and beyond, supporting thousands of brilliant shipbuilding jobs, including right here in Govan.
A key highlight is the expansion of Britain's nuclear deterrent. Submarine-based Trident systems will be reinforced, and nuclear doctrine is being re-evaluated to include a preemptive retaliatory posture. Additionally, more funds are being channeled into cyber warfare, space command, hypersonic weapon development, and AI-led battlefield systems. The idea is to make the UK Army 10 times more lethal.
But in a more dangerous world, the SDR confirms that we must move to warfighting readiness. Warfighting readiness means stronger deterrence. We need stronger deterrence to avoid the huge costs, human and economic, that wars create. And we prevent wars by being strong enough to fight and win them.
But this transformation comes with a price. Economists warn that tax rises may be unavoidable to fund the billions needed for warfighting readiness. Even as the government promises to raise defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, as UK PM Keir Starmer warns that the threats UK now faces is more serious, more immediate and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War. This is a nation not preparing for a war it wants, but for the wars it can no longer ignore.
And we're shifting focus to Gaza now. At least 27 Palestinians were killed in Israeli fire, gunned down near a food distribution point in Rafah. This is the third attack near an aid site to be reported in the last 3 days. In a place which is already on the brink of famine, where millions are starving, displaced, desperate, the scenes of devastation coming out of Gaza prompted the United Nations to demand a probe. On Tuesday, the United Nations called for a prompt and impartial investigation, with the authorities in Gaza accusing Israel of deliberately luring civilians into kill zones.
Attacks on distraught civilians trying to access the paltry amounts of food aid in Gaza are unconscionable. For a third day running, people were killed around an aid distribution site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This morning, we received information that dozens more people were killed and injured. There must be a prompt and impartial investigation into each of these attacks and those responsible held to account.
Now, that's a big charge on Israel. But as the death toll in Gaza climbs, so is the international concern about war crimes, accountability, and a humanitarian operation unraveling into chaos. On the ground, it was horror in Rafah. Palestinians rushed to carry the injured, some lifeless. Those that were killed collecting aid were civilians just trying to reach food. According to the Hamas-run authorities, in Gaza. 102 people have died while collecting aid since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is an Israeli-backed initiative, began operating in the Palestinian enclave. This new aid system has been started by Israel following the 80-day blockade on food deliveries it imposed on Gaza. The Israeli aid agency pays American contractors to distribute food from a handful of sites that are mostly in Israeli-occupied areas of southern Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation replaced the older system that used to be overseen by the UN. While Israel says that the GHF is needed to prevent Hamas from stealing and stockpiling food, the United Nations has opposed the Israeli aid system. The UN says that GHF endangers civilians by forcing them to walk for miles to get food, and could facilitate an Israeli plan to displace the population of northern Gaza, along with UN other aid groups also saying that the bloodshed in recent days just proves their point about the risk of the new Israeli aid system. On the shooting, the Israeli military says troops admitted to firing shots, but they were evasive shots near individuals who had strayed from the designated access routes and were not listening to warnings. According to the Israeli army, the shooting occurred around 550 yards from the distribution site and says it is looking into the details. The International Committee of the Red Cross confirmed that their field hospital in Rafah received 184 casualties, with 27 dead, and many in critical condition. Doctors describing the scene as absolute carnage.
We've had a shooting at the GHF aid distribution centre near Rafah. A lot of the injured people were taken to the local field hospitals, we think to ICRC, but we have had an extortionate amount of people come to the door. As you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
The war has killed more than 54,000 Palestinians. In northern Gaza, 3 Israeli soldiers were also killed in fighting on Tuesday as the military pushes on with its months-long offensive against Hamas in Gaza. Palestinians have to now put up with poor hygiene. Shifting focus for now, our next story is from Pakistan. In a bizarre turn of events, over 200 prisoners escaped from a jail following an earthquake. Sounds unreal, right? But then this is Pakistan we are talking about. What exactly happened? What is known so far? The prisoners reportedly escaped from a jail after chaos erupted during a precautionary evacuation following an earthquake. How many? At least 216 prisoners escaped after the chaos erupted, and over 100 remain on the loose. These are no ordinary developments. How can an earthquake result in prisoners roaming free? Sounds like the script of a dark comedy. But unfortunately, it's happening for real. This is Pakistan's grim reality. What else is known about what happened? The jail superintendent, Arshad Shah, reportedly said over 600 prisoners were taken out from their barracks during the tremors, and amid the chaos, 216 managed to flee. Since Home Minister has reportedly termed the incident the most serious jailbreak in recent years, saying that all escaped inmates were identified and targeted raids were underway at their residences and adjoining areas. Law enforcement authorities have launched a joint operation to track down the remaining escapees. The minister added that an inquiry committee would be formed to investigate the incident. This is a serious jolt for Pakistan's law enforcement, apart from the actual earthquakes that the country is dealing with. Karachi has been hit by a series of earthquakes in the last 24 hours. In fact, Karachi has witnessed a total of 21 earthquakes since Sunday. The country is experiencing a surge in seismic activity. These earthquakes are attributed to the activation of fault lines in Karachi's Landi area. The epicenters of these low-intensity earthquakes, measuring 2.5 to 3.6 magnitude on the Richter scale, were recorded in Malir, Defense Housing Authority, Korangi, Gadab Town, among other areas. And these earthquakes are attributed to the activation of fault lines in Karachi's Landi area. Pakistan's location in a seismically active region makes it vulnerable to earthquakes. The country's unique geology, with several fault lines running beneath it, contributes to the frequency and intensity of earthquakes. And Pakistan's chief meteorologist has attributed the recent tremors in Karachi to the activation of the Lanthi fault line. The Lanthi fault region runs beneath Karachi, particularly affecting areas like Landi, Malir and Gadab. While the Lanthi fault region has not produced major earthquakes in the past, the chief meteorologist has advised that minor tremors for another week. But what exactly are fault lines and how do they form? Fault lines are fractures in the Earth's crust where tectonic plates meet and shift, often resulting in earthquakes. These lines are crucial in understanding geological processes and predicting seismic activity. Fault lines form due to tectonic forces that cause stress in the Earth's crust, resulting in fractures as the crust deforms and breaks. Fault lines can form when plates move apart, collide, or when they slide past each other horizontally. This is all understandable, but what is not is how prisoners can so easily escape. And this is the last kind of embarrassment that Pakistan needs right now. A massive cloud of dust from the Sahara Desert is on its way to the US. It already blanketed much of the Caribbean on its way to southern US. It has triggered sneezes, cough, watery eyes across the region. Local authorities are urging people with asthma or allergies to stay indoors or wear masks outdoors. According to the US National Weather Service in Puerto Rico, the concentration of dust is unusually high, reaching a 0.55 aerosol optical depth, the most so far this year. That's a scientific measure of how much sunlight is blocked by particles in the air. And there's a lot of it. The plume is expected to reach Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi later this week. Though it's likely to lose some density as it travels north, still Caribbean islands saw the worst of it. The dust is so thick in some parts, it's visibly dimming the sun.
Dust travels all the way here from Africa and affects us so heavily is absolutely crazy because the distance between Barbados and Africa is vast.
The dust plume season is just beginning, but this one is already breaking records. In 2020, a similar event was called the Godzilla dust cloud. It had choked the entire region with the densest plume in 50 years. Now, another enormous plume, roughly the size of continental US, is drifting over the Atlantic. By the time it hits the Gulf Coast, it would have traveled over 8,000 kilometers. The US National Weather Service warns of poor air quality, especially for people with respiratory issues. Even if the dust thins out by the time it reaches Florida, skies may still appear hazy and oddly tinted. Experts say the dust scatters sunlight, giving the sky a soft, warm hue. And while it makes for surreal sunsets, the real story is atmospheric. These dust layers can choke clouds, trap heat near the surface, and suppress thunderstorms. And that means hotter, hazier days with very little rainfall. And when it does rain, don't be surprised if your car ends up looking like it's been splattered with mud. That's the Sahara washed down in your driveway. It all begins thousands of miles away, where tropical waves stir up winds in the Sahel region and scoop dust into the skies above the Sahara. Those waves are the same systems that can eventually form hurricanes. But when paired with dust, they are more likely to fizzle out. Experts saying that that's the double-edged sword of these plumes. On one hand, they can trigger health alerts. On the other hand, they suppress hurricane activity. Meteorologists saying the biggest plumes typically come between June and late July. And after that, they tend to weaken before crossing the ocean. But for now, the dust factory is in full swing. And nature is once again putting on a show in the skies.